Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning. We'll start in a moment.
No problem.
Good morning, Rabbi. Shavua Tov.
Good. Oh, wow. What an honor. Shavua Tov. Okay, I think we can start rolling. Good morning, everybody, as we learn some Chassidut, some Kabbalah, some Tanya on our Sunday mornings. And as we come closer to the end of Tanya, we're holding on chapter 52, and which Tanya has 53 chapters. And then we'll go into a whole different concept, a whole different study of Tanya. The Alter Rebbe talks about the concept of the statement, the teaching of the Maggid Mezritch. The Maggid Mezritch taught on the statement of Mibsari Echzel Akad. The statement says that from my own body I can see the aspect of godliness. And the Maggid said that in essence that the concept of spirituality is not something that we have to go search very far. It's not something that is very secretive, but actually we can see it from the makeup of our own being. And if we understand the makeup, the spiritual makeup of a human being, we understand the way the Eivishter, way God ultimately comes into this world and makes an attachment to this world. So we know that every human being is made up of a body and a soul. A body, a guf, which is called in Hebrew a guf, and a neshama, which is a soul. Which the body to the soul is like spirituality to physicality. As we say every day in the morning, Shevzarta bi nishmasi, that God brought within me a soul, a neshama. And a soul itself has many levels to every soul. So Kabbalah says that there are 5 levels to every neshama. Every neshama has 5 basic levels: nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida. Nefesh is the lowest level of the soul, Kabbalah tells us. It's the basic principle, dam hu nefesh. In general, you should know that whatever is brought down in Chassidut, whatever is taught in Kabbalah, all these Kabbalistic terms, which is brought down in the Zohar, which is brought down in the writings of the Arizal, which is brought down in the Tanya, all this is found in the Torah. There's no secrets over here, so to say. Just the Chassidus, Kabbalah, took the wording of the Torah, that we find these messages in a pasuk. I just mentioned a pasuk, Ki Adam hu nefesh. It's a verse in the book of Genesis. For the nefesh, the blood is the nefesh. So Kabbalah thus accentuated and taught. What is the meaning? Ki Adam hu nefesh. The blood is the soul. Nefesh is the soul. Meaning the blood, just like the blood gives life to the body. God forbid you have no blood. God forbid your body will not exist, will cease to exist, because the blood gives life force to the entire body. And if there's a sickness in the blood, God forbid, you have a sickness in the body. Ki adam hu nefesh. The soul gives life to the body. Nefesh. Soul gives life to the body. Then you have nefesh. Ruach is the spirit of the soul, which is also many verses in the Torah. Ruchai, the spirit of man, which is the emotions of the soul, of this neshama, of the soul. And then you have the neshama shanasata bi. It's also a verse. The soul which you put into me, which is also the third name of a neshama, which is the concept of the intellectual aspect of the soul, which the Alter Rebbe, that's why the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that the neshama of a human being is in his mind, and which we're going to come to in this chapter of Tanya. And then you have Chaya, the life force of the soul, which is higher than even the Chachma of the soul, which in some places is brought down as the Ratzain, the will of the neshama. And then you have a Chidush HaBenefesh, the oneness of the soul, which is the aspect of the ultimate concept of the soul, which is brought down in Tanya, is a Chelek Elakam Imal Mamish, is the oneness of the soul, which is connected to God, the godliness of this soul. So I'm going to show you, as the Alter Rebbe is going to explain to you, so I'm going to show you some graphics of this concept, which we have spoken many times, and we'll give you something that the soul, the Alter Rebbe explains, the soul is made up of 10 manifestations, which I just said: Kesed, desire, bliss, will, superconscience, all developing faith, pleasure, desire, fulfillment. That is Ratzon of the neshama. Then you have the three category, three composition, which is the Chachma and Bina and Das of the intellectual part of the soul. And then you have the emotions of the soul, which is Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, the Chesed, Gevura, the giving and firmness, or kindness and severity. And then you have the harmony of the soul, Tiferes. Then you have the Netzach, Hoid, Yisoid, which is the power, the Netzach, the victory, and in control, or Hoid, the appreciation, acknowledgement, Yisoid, which is foundation. Oh, you have all these. I see this, all these different kinds of expression and interpretations from the top to the bottom over here. All the different interpretations to these 10 manifestations of the neshama, which is brought down in the Zohar and in Arizal and in the Alter Rebbe's Tanya. Then you have, so if you look in this picture itself, you have this chart, you have, which Chassidus and Kabbalah says is the makeup of the body, is itself the makeup of the body. The three top is the head. Then you have that's the Chochmah Bina Das is the head. And then you have the torso, which is the Chesed is his right hand, Gevur is his left hand, the Tiferes is the middle that connect all three together, which is his heart. And then you have the Netzach and the Hoid is the right leg and the left leg, and Yisoid is the middle, which is in Kabbalah, sexual organs of a human being. And then you have Malchus, which is the kingship is separate, just like you have Keser, which is separate. The Ratzain, Malchus is also separate, which is the 10th Sfirot, which is kingship, which is, we're going to explain the Alter Rebbe why I'm emphasizing the Malchus. If you have any questions, you may ask. The Malchus is separate because it's the aspect of which is the vessel that holds within it all these concepts. And actually, the Malchus is the kingship. It's called kingship because Malchus gives the expression to the next level, so to say. So, if I'm going to share with you the next thing, I'm going to share with you is the next concept which Chassidus explained, which is the four worlds, which just like you see, so this picture has all the 10 manifestations which Kabbalah says are in each of these four worlds. The world of Atzilus, the world of creation, the world of formation, and the world of Asiyah, the world of action. And Chassidut tells us that in essence, all these 10 manifestations are in each of these worlds. And this is what in Kabbalah is called, say, the Shtalshlus, the concept of the descent of God within each and every of these worlds, and the way he ultimately comes within this physical world itself. Alter Rebbe is going to talk about two things in chapter 52 of Tanya, which is the Chokhmah, the wisdom of each world, and the way the wisdom comes into Malchus, the kingship of each and every world. Which the truth is, in truth, it's the way it is ultimately revealed within our own body. The way it comes in to our own body. So within our own entity, we have Chokhmah, wisdom, which is the highest level in these Eser Sfirot, which is lower than Keser, which is the crown above my head, because that is the Rotzain of a human being. So it's something that's super conscious, and the one that comes into Chokhmah, into wisdom, it's the conscious. But where does everything ultimately come about, reveal itself, is in Malchus. Everything is ultimately reveal itself in the aspect of Malchus, in the kingship. That's why in the way it expresses itself in godliness, you have Chokhmah, which is Torah. Torah is the Chokhmah of the Eibishter, is the wisdom of God. And Kulam b'Chokhmah Sisa, everything was made through the concept of wisdom. So that's why Kihi Chachmaschem, the Torah itself says, the Torah is the Chachmaschem ubinaschem. The Torah is the wisdom and understanding of every person, especially of every Yid, every Jew. And the way he is going to use out this wisdom and understanding is all expressed in Malchus, in the way he's going to rule over the world. Because the Torah says that I created the Torah and I created a human being, so he shall dominate the world. He should make the world a better world. And that is Sfiras HaMalchus. That is the concept of kingship. That's why we also express in our davening, Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Yimlech. The aspect of God's kingship. God, if Pashut needs to be a king of the world, God needs to dominate the world. And the answer is yes. That's why the Eibishter created the world, and he created a human being, that we would reveal godliness and make God the true Melech, the true king over the world, which is the aspect of where the Eibishter God influences the world and changes the world and ultimately brings out the purpose in the creation and why there is a world. So therefore, a Yid needs to always connect to the Torah and its mitzvahs, which we learned in Tanya, in the beginning of Tanya, that Torah and mitzvahs, Torah is the chachma, the wisdom of God, and mitzvahs is the ratzon of the Eibishter, the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So here we have, that's why you cannot comprehend a mitzvah. You can understand it maybe into its basic elements, but to really comprehend the concept of a mitzvah, no, we say in the blessing, Asher kidishanu b'mitzvaysa v'tzivanu. That was the ratzon of the Eibishter, Asher kidishanu, who God sanctified us. B'mitzvaysa is His command, and He commanded us. So the Eibishter sanctified the world. B'mitzvaysa, which Chassidus learns, means with the connection that God made, the capability for the world and God to connect each other is through this mitzvah. And through this mitzvah, which every mitzvah is in a way a physical concept to do something physical within this world. And every mitzvah brings about the connection of God and the world, which that is the ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is the will of God. So here you have the concept of Kesed, the ratzon, the will of God, the chachma of the Eibishter, which is the Torah of God, and the understanding of God, and ultimately, which is the knowledge of God, come about, transmitted to the world through Malchus. Malchus is the concept of action. That's why Malchus is also the concept of the Shechina. The verse says, "V'asuli mikdash v'shachanti b'seicham." The verse says, "You shall make." We're going to come to this verse in a couple of weeks. A portion of Parshas Truma. We're in the book of Exodus. We started the book of Exodus this week, which is going to be the building of the Mishkan at the end of the book of Exodus. And a lot of the book of Exodus is the building of the Mishkan. And the building of the Mishkan, the whole purpose of this Mishkan was that the Shechina, the presence of God, should rest in this world. And that ultimately, the Mishkan was for close to 500 years. And that ultimately was the building of the Beis HaMikdash, the first temple by King Solomon, and ultimately the second temple by Ezra. And we pray for the building of Shebana Beis HaMikdash, that the building of the third Beis HaMikdash. What will be the building? What will be happen with the building of the third Beis HaMikdash? We'll go back to the first verse, the verse in the book of Exodus. Va'asuli Mikdash v'shachanti b'seicham. So v'shachanti is what Kabbalah says is the Shechina. Is one of the Shechina, the presence of God that rests, and that's Malchus. You should know, Chassidus says, Kabbalah says, that the Gemara says that the seven, Shiva, Shemus, Havaya, She'enim Nimchakim. There are 7 names of God which you're not allowed to erase. So why are there 7 names of God? Why are the 7 names of God? The Gemara doesn't say why there are 7 names of God. The Gemara doesn't say in the Torah you find 7 names of God. And these 7 names, like Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is a name of God, like Elokim, Kel, Shakai, etc., etc. There are 7 names in the Torah of God. And here Kabbalah says, why are there 7 names of God? It's because you have 7 emotions. These 7 names of God express the 7 different emotions that are right in front of us. Chesed is the name of God, which is the concept of Yud Kei Vav Kei, kindness, which is connected, as you see in this picture, in this diagram. Chesed is connected to Chachma. That's why it's the name of God that's above and beyond, which is Yud Kei Vav Kei, it's a name of God that is wisdom. That means that it comes into the world, but it's still above the world, and that's why we don't say that name of God. While Gevura is the name of God, Elikim is connected to Bina, to understanding, because that's the name of God that's connected more to Teva, with the nature, etc., etc. But then you have the way God is above names, and that's Keser Malchus, which is the Ein Sof, which is God above and beyond the concept of any name, even above the aspect of Yud Kei Vav Kei. But then the Eibishter comes down, v'asli mitash v'shachanti b'seicham. The Eibishter says, I'm going to come, the ultimate name of God is Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Yimloich. The aspect of Malchus, which is with the Eibishter comes down, a Shechina, the way God comes down and rests in their midst. And as the verse says, v'shachanti b'seicham, that the way God comes down and rests in the midst of every single person. B'seicham doesn't come and rest in the midst of it, the Beis Hamikdash, but actually b'seicham, God comes and rests in the midst of every single person. That means that every single person, Rashi says, every Chassidus again teaches this concept that God comes and rests in the midst of every single Jew. So here we have this concept, these diagrams, which again there's a lot on them. There's a lot of Kabbalistic teachings on them, a lot of Chassidic teachings on them. But here you have the basic principles. I can send you this copy if you're interested, and it's something that we always need to come back to, because as we learn Tanya, and we learn Chassidus in general, it mentions these statements, it mentions these concepts, and it's hard to remember all these aspects. So let's go to the Tanya itself, where the Alter Rebbe is going to explain this aspect, this concept of these aspects of the way God is above the world, the way God comes within the world, and that is all through the Torah. The Torah is the way God, because the Torah in the Gemara, the Talmud is called that the Torah is yes, I will send it to you, Mitch. So the Torah is the blueprint of the world. Kulam, with the expression of Torah, Kulam b'chachma sisa, or that everything is created with the wisdom of God, or as the Torah says that the Gemara says, as I mentioned before, that istakel be'iraisa, the Zohar says, istakel be'iraisa bara alma, that God looked in the Torah and He created the world. So the Torah is the blueprint of the world. If a Jew and every single one of us connect to the Torah, we have the capability of control over ourselves and over the world ultimately. The Rebbe, once was a student who asked the Lubavitcher Rebbe at the Yechidus, do you have control over the world? Is it true that you have control over the world? And the Alter Rebbe said and the Rebbe said, the Lubavitcher Rebbe answered this young man, he said, every Jew has control, because every single Jew could learn the Torah and be a balabas on the world. And the truth is, the meaning of that is that the Torah uplifts a Jew. That's Chachma in general. Wisdom uplifts you. When a person connects to wisdom, he automatically is uplifted from the world. He sees the world from a higher level. And when you see the world from a higher level, then you take the world differently. Then you are become the one who forms the world. So that's why there's this expression, either you make I think I froze for a second. Okay, either you make the environment or the environment makes you. Sorry, it says your interconnection is unstable. So if I freeze for time, I apologize. So That's the way it is. So the Eibusha says, if you use your chachma, if we use chachma in general, if we connect to wisdom, we are in general, if we use our own wisdom, we have the capability to overcome things if we are more intellectual. And we have, as we learned in Tanya, and now we're learning beginning Chitas, the beginning of Tanya, Moyach Shalat ala Lev, mind over matter. And God created the person who should be mind over matter, because that's the way the Eibush created the human being. If you understand these 10 manifestations, mind is always over matter. Chachma, Bin, and Das, Chabad, is higher than Chesed, Gevurah, and Tiferes. Not that, again, higher and lower in spirituality is very relative. And the meaning is that he's higher and lower. It means that the Eibush wanted that your Chesed and Gevurah and Tiferes, your emotions, should be controlled by your Chachma, Bin, and Das, by your wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And if you're controlled by your wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, then you have a balanced situation. You don't want to have that. You want to be more emotional, but then you're going to have a very imbalanced, uncontrollable situation. So you'll have an emotional situation, but that will be a very it'll be a very rocky life. And if you want to have an emotional, rocky life, that's your choice. If a person can use his chachma, if he will use his wisdom and understanding and knowledge, then he'll be able to control his emotions. And his emotions will be able to actually be a positive influence, and it'll be a positive journey. So here we have this concept. The Alter Rebbe says, why should the mind, that's what the Alter Rebbe was talking in chapter 451. Everything comes from the mind. Everything comes from the mind. Everything ultimately goes through the mind. And everything that the body is automatically in the mind. And therefore it starts with the mind, with the brain, the energy from the brain. And in the brain, everything is within the brain, and then from the brain, from the energy of the brain, and from the brain, it goes into the 248 limbs of the body, each limb according to its capacity. And when there's a pain in one of the limbs, that a person has pain in his body is all because it's felt back in the head. It's felt back in his brain that there's something hurting. There's something hurting that part of the body. And because the brain feels the pain of the hand or the pain of the toe, that's the way the brain understands its pain of its body. So the energy of the person comes from his brain, and ultimately everything is felt back in the brain. That's the power of Chachma, Bina, Das. That's the power of the intellectual part of his brain. So too in spirituality. So too in spirituality. Everything comes from Chachma. Everything comes from wisdom. And everything ultimately comes back to wisdom. It goes from wisdom, it comes back to wisdom, and the pain and the positive and the negative and everything that's in between is all felt in the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the wisdom of God. So let us go now to chapter 52 of Tanya. Let us go to the Tanya itself, and we will learn chapter 52 of Tanya. Let's go to the chapter. So now the Rebbe says as follows. Let's share this better. Let's share this better. Okay. So now the Rebbe says, let's go into the Tanya. Let's read the Tanya. Let's read the Tanya itself. He's explained. We can go to a little introduction of the Tanya. In the previous chapter, the Alter Rebbe began to expand upon the theme of the indwelling of the Shekhinah which resides in the Holy of Holies, and likewise in other places. He asked, is not the whole world filled with God's glory? Since there's no place void from him, what did we mean when we said God chose a specific place for his Shekhinah to rest? And he explains, in chapter 51, that according to the text, from my flesh I see God, using an analogy of the soul, which pervades all the 248 organs of the body, which pervades, I'm sorry, somebody wrote something, somebody asked a question. Pervades all the organs of the body. From my flesh I see God, using the analogy of the soul, which pervades all the 248 organs of the body, yet its principal habitation is in the brain. This cannot be said to apply to the soul's essence, for that which is found equally in all 248 limbs, from the highest, the brain, to the lowest, to the feet. Rather, this refers to the Shekhinah, to the flow, to the general flow of the soul's vitality into the body, and its revelation, therefore, before it diffuses and draws down into all the body organs according to its particular capacity. Concerning this general aspect, we say that its principal providence is in the dwelling in the brain. From there, a mere glimmer of this vitality is drawn down and revealed in the other bodily organs. Now, the Alter Rebbe is giving you an analogy. This is all an analogy. The body is an analogy. If you understand the analogy, you'll understand what the godly concept in it. But you have to understand the analogy. The same is true, the Alter Rebbe explained in the analogy of the godliness in the world. The core, the essence of the Ein Sof, is the same in the higher and the lower worlds. He is concealed from them all equally, thus like the essence of the soul. For even the higher worlds, no one can comprehend them at all. So therefore, to the essence of God, there's no difference in the higher worlds and the lower worlds. They're all equal. At the same time, he equally is found in both the higher and lower worlds. It's a very important thing that Alter Rebbe explained in chapter 51 of Tanya. To understand that the Eibishter God, in his essence, Atzmos, which is called in Kabbalah and Chassidus Atzmos, is equally in above and below. There's no above and below by Atzmos, by the essence of God. There's no concept of above and below. There's no concept of heaven and earth. There's no concept of lower and higher, of darkness and light. To that entity of God, just like to the essence of the soul, Yechidah Shebenefesh, there's no concept of levels. The difference between the high and the low worlds, as in analogous to the body organ, substitutes only regard the stream of vitality which flows and revealed from the Ein Sof in order to create and vitalize the worlds and its creatures. That's the Shekhinah. That's the Shekhinah. The way the Shekhinah comes down, now it's going to come down in different levels. Concerning this level of revelation, we say that there's higher worlds. Godliness is revealed to a greater degree in the low worlds to a lesser degree. In the present chapter, the Alter Rebbe goes into a further explain how the analogy of the godliness and its place in the world relates to the analogy, in which the individual vitality in his infused state resides in the brain. So that's why the Alter Rebbe starts off with the concept of the brain. This is chapter 52. Just like in the human soul. This is the analogy. The principle and the manifestation of the unfused vitality is in the brain. while the organs receive merely a light and potence which radiates to them from the source of the manifestation of the said vitality in the brain. That means the brain has within it all this power. And then the brain diffuses, gives off to each and every organ what it needs. So even what's in the brain, in the chachma of the brain, the body does not get. And they say, I think even in science, they say you're only using 10% of your brain. So that means your brain has such power. There's such power in my brain that it's only my body is only receiving 10% of the power that's in my brain. Because the power in my brain, even if my brain would give off all its power, my body would not be able to handle it. That's the basic meaning. And therefore, I need to develop my brain better and stronger to be able to give my body more energy. But we see the opposite. As we get older, the brain starts to lose its vitality, starts to lose its strength. That's why we make a bracha every day in our davening. Ata chaynin la'adam das, the power of the brain. That the Eibishter should continue to give us a healthy brain, a healthy me'ach, a healthy brain, so that our brain would be able to give every part of the body its need. Because kulam b'chachma sisa, because the brain is a very important part of our existence. Kacha mamish, so indeed, figuratively speaking, that's the analogy. Gilu galos hamshachas hachayis is the essential manifestation of the general stream of vitality. Animating the world and the creatures therein, whom in Luvash is all enclosed, v'nichla b'rtzeine v'chachmaser b'nasi v'dati izbarach, is all in the blessed will, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. Here we gave you the four things that we show in the chart: the rotzain, the will, the wisdom, chachma, the bina, the understanding and knowledge, which is, and the kroyim b'shem moichem, which is called intelligence. So look in the explanation. The Sfirat of Keser, will, chachma, bina, dat, as they exist above, are collectively called intelligence. Within them are clothed the stream of unified, undiffused vitality, which is the first revelation of Ein Sof in the world. And where can we find all of this? These will, chachma, bina, das, of godliness, is all found, are all clothed within the Torah and the mitzvahs. So look at the explanation. This is their abode, for the law, Torah law, mitzvahs, are themselves the will of God, desiring as he does that the law of a particular case should be specifically one way and not the other, and that this a particular mitzvah be referred in a certain manner and not otherwise. Understanding the law and knowing the reason for the mitzvahs, this belongs to the divine level of chachma and bina. Thus, within the Torah and mitzvahs is enclosed the intelligence of above. And in it is found the undiffused stream of vitality that descends into the world. So therefore, that's why the Torah and the mitzvahs are the blueprints of this world. And the Gilui Klalas Hamshachazu, the manifestation of this general flow of life, who Makar Achayis is the source and the vitality, Asher Oilamis the Kabbalah, which the world receives called echad beprotis, each one in a particular receiving. But it is diffused glow that shines forth from its source. So it's all about to be able to connect this physical thing to the spiritual reality. Even though that this diffused, or what we're going to diffuse from it is only going to be a glimpse, is only going to be a ray. It's not going to be the essence of the brain, the wisdom. That is far and beyond for the capability of this physical thing to connect to it or to be able to receive its essence. It only receives a slimmering glow, 10%, small percentage of its essence. Alter Rebbe gives another analogy. In a similar manner to the light that radiates from the sun. By way of example, with the ray are but a diffused glimmer of the sun's essence, or as the faculty of the organs of the body derived from the brain, as discussed above in the previous chapter. So whether you want to give an example of the body, whether you want to give an analogy of the sun, either way, the essence of the sun does not come down to the world, because the world couldn't handle the essence of the sun. It would disappear. It would burn up. It only the ray of the sun, thank God, comes down to the world and gives the world everything in abundance, what we receive from the ray of the sun. And this source being the revelation from the general stream of the vitality found within the intelligence, Nikra, this is what's called in Kabbalah, Alma De'izgalia. This is what's called in Kabbalah the world of manifestation. Because the Alter Rebbe will soon say, it is here that godliness becomes manifest in the world. Alma De'izgalia, the revealed world, or the world of manifestation. Or it's called Umatranisa. It's called the queen. The queen. Matranisa, which is the queen. Shabbos Malkusa, the queen. Malchus is called Malkusa, the queen. It's called the king and the queen. Or Ima, it's also known as Ima Tata, the nether mother, the lower level of the mother, which is Bina. It's known as mother. It alludes to Bina as mother. Bina, however, is the higher level of the mother, while Malchut is the nether mother, the lower level of mother. So you have Chachma and Bina, which is in the intellect. Chachma is Av, is the father. Bina is the mother. They both come down into Malchus. Malchus is masculine kingship, but it's also called Malkusa, mother, queen. So in Malchus, we have the lower level of Av, and we have the lower level of Aim, of mother. And look at the last one, Ushchina. That's in Malchus, is also called the Shechina. So here, the Alter Rebbe gave you different terminologies to the Sfiras HaMalchus, to the attribute of kingship. And that is Alma De'izgalia, Mater Nisa, Ema Tata, and Shechina. Now, why do we need to have all these names? Because all of these names give us another understanding in the attribute of Malchus, the way it comes from Chachma and Bina of the the way it's higher in Chochmah and Bina. So Chochmah and Bina is the highest level in the 10 manifestations. But everything Chochmah and Bina also need to come into Malchus, into the attribute of Malchus. Because Chochmah and Bina also need to come into the attribute of Malchus, the way it expresses itself and the way it becomes a dominion, the way it becomes expressed in this world, and the way it changes the world. Shachanti. So all of this, al shem shemakar zehu reishis galus. As the Rebbe explains, the Alter Rebbe now goes and explains the meaning of the character of each of the above mentioned listed names, as well as their effect. Al shem shemakar reish, al shem shemakar zehu reishis is galus himself. The above mentioned source is called the world of manifestation. For this source, Malchus, is the beginning of the revelation of the Ein Sof. And since the source itself constitutes a revelation, it is known as the world of manifestation because of its own nature and not because it vitalized the revealed world. It's called the queen because it is the level which extends to and illuminates the world in a revealed manner, similar to a queen, for through it the wishes of the king is revealed. Thus the source of life, meaning the first revelation of the light of Ein Sof, is first manifested in the queen. And from this source, there extends to each individual world or creature the particular light and the vitality suitable for it, for which reason it's called the nether mother, for it's the mother and the source of all the particular forms of vitality of each and every creature. And the light dwells and enclosed in them, in the worlds and the respective creatures, thereby animated. Since it dwells and animates and is enclosed in every world and creature, it's called the Shekhinah, which is the previous explains means indwelling. Till now, the Alter Rebbe has classified how the light is a source of the worlds and creatures in general. He now goes on to explain how it's a source of the Jewish souls. Therefore, this Malchus is also called the mother of children, meaning the Jewish souls. And it's called the community of Israel, Knesset Yisrael. It's also called the gathering of the Jewish people. Shamaka Zer, because from this source, Netzlu Neshamas Datzilus, comes about the souls of the world of Atzilus, Vinivru, and from Malchus of Atzilus is created Neshamas Debrias, the souls of the world of Bria. And so too ultimately the souls of the world of Yetzirah. And so too ultimately the souls of the world of Asiyah, the world of action. V'kulan elu, einon, and all of them, all the worlds, creatures and souls, being derived only from the extension of the vitality and life which extends and streams forth from this source, which is called Shekhinah. Kispastus ma'ashamet, like the resembling of the radiance of the light of the sun. Aval Shekhinah atzma, but the Shekhinah itself, which is the core and the manifestation whereby the blessed Ein Sof illuminates the worlds in a revealed form, and which is the source of all streams of vitality of the worlds. Look at, he ends off, the entire vitality being no more than the light which is diffused from that light radiance from the sun. The Shekhinah, which is the lowest level in every world, is so much powerful for the world to contain. That's why we only receive a light from the Shekhinah, like the ray of the sun. The Shekhinah is the sun, and we receive a ray of the Shekhinah. The world cannot endure nor receive the light of the Shekhinah, it might actually dwell and enclose itself within them without garments to screen, conceal its light from them. So the Shekhinah itself, like the sun, needs to have, Talmud says that the sun, the Eibishter put it in a sheath. The sun itself needs to have its garments protect the world, so that the ray of the sun that comes from the sun will be a ray that is diminished from the sun itself, because the sun itself would consume the world. The Shekhinah itself would not consume the world. What would the Shekhinah itself do? If the Shekhinah will be revealed, then the Shekhinah would nullify the world, so that they may not become entirely nullified and lose its identity within their source. Just as the light of the sun is nullified in its source, namely in the sun itself, where the light cannot be seen, but only the integral mass of the sun itself. So the Alter Rebbe says, so too, since the Shekhinah, and this is an interpretation, since the Shekhinah is a source of vitality of all creation, all which is received but a ray of the Shekhinah, then if the Shekhinah itself, the actual source, would be manifest, all creative beings would be nullified to that source. Their situation will be exactly similar to the sun's ray as they are found within the orb of the sun, where they are completely nullified. In order for the Shekhinah, make for me a mikdash, and I will dwell in your midst. In order for the Shekhinah to dwell within the worlds and their creation, there must be therefore garments which serve to conceal its light. Only then can creation receive the Shekhinah and not nullify its existence. And the Alter Rebbe is going to continue and explain what are the garments. What are the garments? And the garments are the Torah and the mitzvahs. That's the garments. That gives us the capability to connect to God, is these garments. But what are these garments which are able to conceal and clothe the Shekhinah, yet not itself be completely nullified within the light? This is his blessed will and wisdom and so forth. That's why the Eibishter, God, this is genius. This is pure genius, my friends. The Eibishter wanted to have a dira b'tachtonim. God wanted his light to be part of this world. The Eibishter wanted that he would have a dwelling place in this world. But God understood, if he would dwell in this world, the world would be bottled. The world would nullify itself. Like the sun, if the sun would come an inch closer to the world would disappear. It would be impossible to survive. The Eibishter knew, if he would come and reveal himself in the world would nullify itself. It would become part of his existence and would not have its own identity. So what did God do? Concealed himself. But he wanted to reveal himself. So how did he do the two things in one place? So the Eibishter need to create something that would be able to hide himself and at the same time reveal himself. And that thing would be able to handle it. And that is the Torah. That's why the Torah is the Chachma de Eibishter. It's not our wisdom. That's why a Jew believes that every mitzvah and everything in the Torah is min hashamayim. It's not man-made, chas v'shalom. It was never man-made. It's above the understanding of man as it is the understanding of man, because the Torah is the wisdom of God, the way God clothed himself, that every human being should understand. And that's what the Talmud says, HaTorah medaberes keloshem bnei adam, that the Torah speaks in the language of man. The Torah, which is the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the wisdom of God, which is above human comprehension, which is above human understanding. My thought is not your thought. And the Eibusha says, I'm going to create a garment. I'm going to create something that will be able to handle my wisdom and not at the same time be humanistic, be human, so to say. Be a physical entity in the human, in the natural world. And that is the Torah and its mitzvahs. Nothing else in this world can be a garment for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because nothing in the world can create a garment for God. How is it possible for anything, for any human, for any great rabbi, to be able to create a garment for godliness when godliness and this garment are two opposites? Only God can create a garment that will be for him, that this garment will be able, on one hand, to hide within it, godliness, and at the same time, not lose its identity. And only God can create such a concept. And now, when the Jew takes that garment and he connects it to actually a physical thing, a real physical thing, real gashmi, and he puts them together, now we have the complete circle. We have the purpose that God said, I want to dwell in this physical world. So when I do a mitzvah, when I take the physical thing, it has its own identity, and I have my own identity, and I connect it to God's will and God's desire and God's clothes, now we have the full circle. We have the full circle. We have God, we have the human and this physical side and the physical world, and we have the middle thing, the connector, the mitzvah, the Torah, the middle entity which God created to be able to unite the physical and the spiritual together. So whether we actually see, maybe we don't merit to see it because we're not capable of seeing, that when we do the physical mitzvah, we are actually connecting. We're actually bringing the presence of God in this mitzvah. But it's done through the garments of the Torah, which hides this concept. Only a small ray of it comes in, so that the physical does not disappear, and I don't disappear, and the mitzvah doesn't disappear, and we all come together as one. Hashem echad, u'shmo echad. The Eibishter and his name, God and his mitzvah, God and his world, which he created, all become infused as one entity and one concept. Well, pretty heavy. And we'll stop over here. We haven't finished the entire chapter, of chapter 52, Tanya. And if you have any questions, you may ask. And we shall continue Mid Shem, learning Tanya together as we finish the entire 53 chapters together, and very powerful teachings of the Alter Rebbe and Chassidus and Kabbalah. I wish you all a wonderful week, happy week, a healthy week, a beautiful week. And Mid Shem tomorrow at 8 a.m. we continue to learn Chitas, which is Chumash and Tanya, We're holding chapter 13 then in Tanya, and we'll see you again on tomorrow at 8 a.m. Have a wonderful.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Booker. Sei gesund and stark.
Amen. Gamatam. You too. Be healthy and well. God bless you.